This is episode 38 of Farm to Markets, and today we are talking about the Labor Department's response to Fidelity allowing Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in its 401k accounts, credit card reward programs, and we have a few lightning round questions at the end. The U.S. Labor Department openly criticized Fidelity for offering the ability to buy Bitcoin in their 401k accounts set up through Fidelity. Is the Labor Department right to do this, or is it just unsolicited advice that no one wanted, Alex?
Well, I see this from two different standpoints. Number one, this is a not so veiled threat. We were talking about this just before we started the video, that the Department of Labor is basically telling Fidelity that they are going to be putting them under the microscope if they put Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in their retirement plans. To me, if the Department of Labor, I guess, feels that Fidelity is doing something that runs afoul of federal law, I guess it's within their purview to take a look at it. Otherwise, if they're stretching their regulatory authority, they should probably just butt out. But from a different standpoint, I do think that some of their criticisms is fair. It may not necessarily be the case with Fidelity themselves, but cryptocurrency to me is more of something that you invest in with money you can afford to lose, and a lot of people, especially older workers, generally can't afford to lose decent chunks of their retirement accounts due to volatility in the market. I looked up some interesting information, and so for people like 45 to 54, the median 401k balance is just $57,000, and this is 2021 data. For 55 to 64, people who are going to retire in the near future, it's just $85,000. That's median 401k balance. So it's probably not a great idea for people to be pumping a bunch of money into crypto when they're thinking about retirement, especially when they don't have a whole lot to their names anyways. But again, like I said, it's probably the Labor Department just saber rattling at Fidelity, like, don't do this or we're going to jam you up. So from that standpoint, I don't really like what they're up to.
There's an adage in our industry that says, don't ever get into a fight with an institution that buys paper by the ton and ink by the barrel. And essentially, Big Brother here is doing everything they possibly can to intimidate Fidelity. Being in the financial services industry, I can tell you that every day you make a decision on what you're going to do for your clients, you have to decide, who am I going to get sued by today? Because if you don't keep the federal government happy, well, they'll make your life miserable. But if you don't offer investment choices that could have life-changing effects in people's accounts, and the only relation they have with you is through a 401k, then you run the future a class action suit of 10 million people saying, well, I could have bought Bitcoin, but Fidelity wouldn't allow me to do it. So they're essentially doing risk management with their decision. It's not like they overwhelmingly want to buy Bitcoin for folks. They're getting lots of pressure from their customers to put Bitcoin in the portfolios. When it comes right down to it, when I need financial advice, I don't go to the Labor Department trying to find financial advice. The last thing in the world we need is somebody whose financial acumen is as horrible as the federal government telling people how to invest their money. I think they should butt out.
It's called a position paper. So if you don't like cryptocurrencies, write a position paper on it. Issue the Labor Department's guidance on cryptocurrency. But Fidelity is just doing what any good company would do, is that they're trying to provide something that people want, to encourage them to use Fidelity as their 401k provider. It's a free market. The Labor Department certainly can inform investors of the risk, and they probably should, and they should probably post that all over their website. But I don't think they should be threatening Fidelity for trying to add something that people want in their 401k plans. We manage 401k plans, and we're certainly not going to add Bitcoin to the fund lineup. But if some of these companies got together and started a petition of like 40 people that all wanted a Bitcoin or cryptocurrency option in the portfolio, I'd probably recant and actually put one in there. I'd probably publish my own position paper on it and probably make them sign something that said, hey, I didn't recommend this, you guys wanted it. But I wouldn't bar them from adding a cryptocurrency option to their 401k plan if enough people showed interest in it. So yeah, again, I don't think they should be threatening Fidelity. I think Fidelity is just doing what any good company would do, and is trying to provide options that people want. All right, does that we'll move on to the we'll call this the devil's advocate round. And I was feeling risky this week, and I think I can pretty much summarize everybody's position. And I'm going to go with that. Alex is going to end up being the devil's advocate by default. Joe is going to be adamantly opposed to credit card reward points, and I'm going to be somewhere in the squishy middle. So so we'll go ahead and kick off the devil's advocate round. The financial community appears to be split on the use of credit card reward points. Some, like David Ramsey, abhor the use of credit cards and the reward programs, while others, like Robert Berger, will write entire articles and YouTube videos on the best cards to use and the best way to manage those reward points. Do you think it's worth getting a credit card for the reward points? Alex.
Well, let's start with the devil's advocate position. I would say, with some caveats that I'll get to in a minute, yes, it is worth it. I know my wife and I, we have several credit cards. We don't go quite into the black hole that is like all these weird credit card strategies where people have like 20 credit cards and each one is good for one thing or another with different cashbacks. But we have a few. And there's one with 2% cash back at restaurants. One is 5% on rotating categories. Right now, that's gasoline. Another one is 2% constant on gas, 3% constant on groceries. We probably get a few $100 back a year from them, just from doing what we would be doing if we were putting it on a debit card instead of on a credit card. The caveat that I will put on this is, you shouldn't do this if you can't control yourself with a piece of plastic, whether it's a debit card or credit card. If you're overdrafting your checking account with your debit card, you're definitely going to end up in debt with a credit card. So it's probably not a good idea for somebody who can't control their spending to even consider it. On the other hand, though, people like Dave Ramsey, I think they have some very good advice. Their basic financial plans are pretty sound, but I've used this analogy in the past, and I'll use it again here. A lot of these people are like the financial equivalent of Alcoholics Anonymous. They're there for people who need emotional support and a structure around them to keep them from screwing things up, mostly because they've already screwed things up for themselves or for the people around them. Credit cards are a super easy way to screw things up for yourself and the people around you. And so again, if you're the kind of person that's not going to be able to control yourself, probably avoid credit cards. But otherwise, if you have self-control, if you just pretend that the piece of plastic you pull out of your wallet is a debit card and not a credit card, I see absolutely no reason not to. I use them. I've probably got no plans to stop. So there we go.
When it comes to credit card use, I have two different messages. First off, if you're independently wealthy, where your cash flow is so positive that if you drop a $20 bill on the ground, you have to go, well, do I really want to bend down there and pick that up? Because it's a lot of work. Then I don't care what you do. I don't care how you make your cash purchases. However, if you're just starting out, you've got student loan debt, you're at the first rung of the economic ladder, and you're trying to be as efficient as you possibly can be, credit cards are a horrible way to do cash purchases. They've done countless studies that show that when people use credit cards with reward points, they'll spend between 10 and 40% more in a month than they would if they used cash only. And those numbers are much, much higher when you're buying food, either at fast food restaurants or in regular restaurants. Because if you're paying with cash, you're thinking, well, do I have enough money to buy the iced tea, or can I have a glass of wine? But if you're using a credit card, you don't feel the pain for 30 to 45 days. So people go, well, it's no big deal. I'm getting reward points anyway. So There's a reason why credit card companies entice folks with the reward points. It's because they actually use the credit card more than they would if there wasn't reward points. And the more times they use transactions, the more they pay those transaction fees, the more money the credit card companies make. They make billions of dollars in these programs, and it's all a race to the bottom or the top, depending on how you look at it, to capture that transaction market. So, hey, like I said, if you're extremely wealthy and every day you make more money than you actually spend, and you'll actually continue to make more money till you die, I don't care. But if you're working class, middle class, trying to be as efficient as possible, use cash for the majority of your expenses, and don't even think about reward points. If you're making a online purchase and you have to use a credit card, then fine. But don't let the reward points tail wave your financial plan dog.
Okay. So your opinions weren't as diverse as I guess I would have hoped. But, and I guess so the one thing I'll add is that, so like Dave Ramsey, for instance, does not, obviously he does not advocate the use of credit cards for basically the reasons that Joe just outlined, but he also would dissuade people from using reward points because essentially, according to Dave Ramsey's website, is that the reward points that you get are basically, you're basically counting on other people to, keep debt on their credit cards and then pay high interest rate on that debt in order for you to get those reward points. So, credit card companies basically make their money from interest payments that when people don't pay off their cards every month. They make money from late fees, and then they make money from the interchange fees when you swipe your card at the merchant store or whatever. And so Dave Ramsey's philosophy is that he doesn't want to be part of a program where you basically need people to not pay. You need people to get into debt, miss payments, and then pay extremely high interest rates on the debt that they carry on that card in order for you to get the reward points. And Dave prefers to just to not be part of the program altogether. So, and I get that. I 100% get where he's coming from. I tried to, in the limited amount of time I had to research, just find out where the majority of your interest rate or those reward points come from. And what I can find is that the majority of them is basically just a kickback you get when you swipe your card at at whatever merchant you're at. So is that the card company charges the merchant a couple percentage points, and then essentially the card company will give you a share of that fee that they charge the merchant. The merchant's not dumb. They're instead of having a $4.99 foot long, they're just going to round up to the $5 foot long, and with knowing that the card company is going to kick back 1 cent to you when you swipe your MasterCard or your Discover card or whatever. So ultimately, those reward points, it's not like you're coming out ahead. You're basically just getting money back that you've already spent in the first place. So, the way to think of it is that when you go in the subway, your $5 foot long is technically a $4.99 foot long if you swipe your card. It's kind of a bummer for people who use debit cards or cash, because then essentially you're paying an extra cent so that everybody else can use their credit cards. And so, I mean, if you are using debit cards, if you're using cash, you're basically paying it's a small premium, but it's a premium nonetheless, so that everybody else can use their debit cards. I get where they're coming from. Frankly, is that we use a credit card for our bigger expenses and stuff like that, just because we can track them, and we do get the reward points from them. But it's basically just putting money from one pocket and putting it in the other, because you're basically just getting money back that you just spent anyways. So it's not like you're coming out light years ahead and you're saving all this money. If you just wouldn't have spent the money anyways, then you would have saved it. But if you do have to spend the money, you're basically getting the 1% discount that you otherwise wouldn't have got if you use cash. So yeah, I don't know. I couldn't find enough compelling evidence to say that it's all these reward points are coming from people who fail to make payments on their debt. So at this point, I sleep okay at night knowing that occasionally we use our credit cards for for bigger purchases and stuff like that. I don't know.
Years ago, it was negotiable. You could walk into a appliance store to buy a new refrigerator, and you could say, okay, your refrigerator costs $2,000. How about we settle and I pay you $1,850 and I pay cash, or I'll put it on the credit card. And the merchants used to be 50-50 would work with you to give you that discount because it was just easier for them to have cash on the barrel. Today, it's much more difficult. Most companies don't give you that break. They either charge the same one way or the other, but in reality is that I treat these reward points as kind of like Joe Camel on a pack of cigarettes, is that it's designed to make use of the credit card so much more attractive. So you use it more and more and more. Right. And with the way Joe Camel was accused of hooking children into smoking, I'd say that reward points are used to addict people to using credit cards as opposed to using cash.
Yeah. And too, I mean, yeah, and if you don't use a credit card, you have to pay like a 1 cent premium on and everything you buy, which, I'm sure either way, I'm sure if you use reward points or if you don't, it's not going to have any material impact on your life when you get to age 65. But
gotta love my dentist. They still give me a 5% discount for paying cash.
Yeah, and I think the doctor's office does that as well, is if you pay in cash right away. But I think a lot of times they'll let you pay on a card too. So
what I'm saying is that if you use your cash instead of a card.
Oh, really?
They'll give you a 5% discount. So $100 cleaning, it only costs $95.
Interesting. Oh, good for them. All right. We'll move on here. Is that to the move on to the lightning round? All right, Elon Musk is currently trying to purchase Tesla. He basically said he was going to do it, and now there's some issues about where they're getting the funding. My guess is that they'll end up doing it. And if he does, does this make Twitter more attractive to you? Would you buy some shares of Twitter if this deal goes through?
I don't think it makes, as a company, Twitter any more profitable than it already is. Twitter's only turned an annual profit twice in its history, and it's not currently profitable. There was a pre-existing plan to try and get it there by the middle of the decade. Unclear if it was actually going to make it. I wasn't particularly interested in investing in Twitter before, and I'm not particularly interested now.
Elon Musk, once he purchases this, we won't be able to buy shares because he'll take it private. Now, I heard that he's planning on bringing it public again in 3 years through some sort of an IPO. But at this point, I think the real question is that would I be interested in an arbitrage situation where I buy it now before, well, it's still trading south of its asking price. But the answer is no. No, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you have the option to buy it right now, assuming that this deal goes through, and then they'd make some deal for, to take it private. And then, yeah, like Elon said, a couple of years from now, he'd kind of re-offer it to the public. But Alex brought up a good point, is that, this is one of those shocking companies where it's like, I can't believe Twitter's been around this long and only actually made a profit in 2 consecutive years. And, I know Elon Musk has done some pretty good things with SpaceX and Tesla. But yeah, you'd have to make a pretty compelling argument of why Twitter's going to be how he's going to make it profitable before I start buying shares of this. All right, when shopping, is that some people they like to have lots of options when they're trying to purchase something, and other people think the having too many options makes the experience overwhelming. What do you think? Would you rather have lots of options, or would you just have 2 or 3 options that you had to choose from?
Well, it's weird you asked this question because I was thinking about doing my newsletter article this month on this. This is called the paradox of choice, where there's a lot of research emerging that suggests if you have too few choices, people feel like they have no options and they don't like it. But if you have a few too many choices, everybody basically gets totally confused and brain fried, and they end up getting paralysis by analysis, and they don't buy anything. And so the basic argument is that there's an ideal, and it depends on what the product is basically, but there's an ideal number of options for a particular product that people want to see before they either feel like they're getting no options or too many that they just can't make a decision. So I think depending on how many there are, it'll make it more difficult, but there does seem to be some kind of a golden mean.
There was a movie that came out in the 80s called Moscow on the Hudson with Robin Williams. And it's a story of a Russian Jewish immigrant who comes to the United States when President Reagan opened up the United States to allow religiously persecuted people to leave the Soviet Union. And there's a scene where he goes into a grocery store and he asks the store manager where the coffee is. So he goes, aisle 4. And Robin Williams goes over there and there's like 100 different choices of coffee. And he has a personal breakdown right there in the aisle because he's so overwhelming. I've lived in America my whole life. I've learned to adjust to all the different options. I like having options. That's the beauty of the free market. After a while, you just get better and better at knowing what options are appropriate for you. And when you learn to navigate those needs, you end up making better choices with more options.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends what I'm like. If I'm shopping for like work clothes, I hate options. I want a shirt, I want pants, and I want them to look good on me. And I don't know. It's been extremely difficult to do I want like the French collar or like a widespread collar? I don't know. I get overwhelmed with the options. I'm willing and still looking for somebody to pay where they're just like, send me your measurements. What's your face look like? Wear this shirt. And you come up with that company, and I'm a subscriber. So
I've said that for years, Tom. I said that if I was not in the financial services business, I'd be in the men's fashion business because I would just go up and down the street saying, look, just give me your measurements. I'll keep them on file. Every 6 months, I'll send you 2 new shirts.
Yeah. And
we'll have you come in once every 3 years to refit you for a new suit. Because like you, most men don't want to go through that process. So if somebody would just make those decisions for them, that's great. However, I don't know if you're quite so willing to advocate, that opportunity for other things. Is that I'm sure there's other places like in the music industry that you like having lots of choices, or maybe coffee. Maybe there's having lots of different choices is something that you'd enjoy.
Yeah, and I've seen algorithms for coffee and wine where you basically just answer some questions and then they like psychologically profile you, and you end up with the coffee that supposedly matches your personality. I've never taken one, but yeah, supposedly some of these can be distilled down to an algorithm. But yeah, when it comes to and you're right, music, it's probably good to have options. But yeah, when it comes to clothing, there's so many options, and I just don't have time to research all of it and get the correct measurements and all that stuff.
First world problems, I guess.
Yeah, it really it is. So I just want to show up to work with a clean shirt, and it's hard. All right, last question is that according to a recent study, 3 out of 5 people think that they could be a social media travel influencer. Are you one of these 3 people that think they could do it?
I would say I would doubt it, but some of the people who get YouTube famous kind of surprise me, so I guess who really knows?
Emphatically no. I'm well entrenched in the 2 out of the 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with no. I'm not gonna. I think most people could get into travel, but the thing that makes this hard is that the startup cost. It seems low, but I mean, you got to buy like plane tickets to interesting places. You got to buy cameras that are upwards of $1,000. You got to buy editing software. So I think there's a pretty high startup cost. And then there's also the fact that you can't just have like any personality. You have to be interesting and fun to watch. And there's certainly quite a few people who would not fit that category. So I'm going to go with, just for the sheer reason that you'd have to dump a ton of money and time and give up your day job essentially to do this, I'm gonna go with no.
I think you have to have an appreciation for what a majority of people like. I don't have that ability. To me, the ideal way to spend your 2-week vacation is to ride camels across the Nubian desert. Going to Cabo or going on a Carnival cruise to the Caribbean or hanging out on the beach in Hawaii, I have no interest in that. But that's what a majority of people would love to do. So in terms of travel influence, there are so few people who think like I do. I couldn't influence hardly anybody.
There might be enough where you could start a YouTube channel based on that, and you'd have your own niche. It's like Joe Coco's Vacation. You go into the wilderness and eat grasshoppers and contemplate the plight of whatever nation that you're in, and put that on YouTube. But I also wanted Drew to make a documentary of his vacation to. Is he in Gary, Indiana? Is that where he's going? Somewhere in Indiana. But if you could make a travel blog and make Indiana interesting, I'd say you have a bright future. So that goes. All right. Well, that is it for episode 38 of Farm to Markets. We'll see you next week.